Welcome back everyone to the Weekly Mailbox, the weekly Q&A over here on the F1 Reviews channel. The first video since hitting 1k subscribers. Cheers guys. That means so much in such a short amount of time as well. You guys have been smashing it. And today, it's a Q&A day. Tomorrow is the Formula E Show episode 2, the new podcast on the channel. I'm really hyped for that, and tomorrow we've got a new graphics package coming, big topic of conversation for that. But today is the Q&A, starting with this question from the good old David Pesher. Who do you think is the best driver in Formula 1, Formula 2 and Formula E? Let's start off with the man that I always say is the best driver in Formula E, Felix Rosenqvist. The Swede, in my opinion, is a class above the rest. Yes, you've got drivers like Jean-Eric Vergne, who's leading the championship. Sam Bird, the top Brit in the championship. There he is on screen right now. You've also got Sebastian Buemi. Nicholas Prost at times has been okay, but recently he's definitely dropped off recently. Lucas di Grassi, of course, what a world-class talent he is in terms of Formula E. But for me, Rosenqvist is the best. He's not got the best car. He's up against a tough teammate in terms of ex-Formula 1 driver Nick Heidfeld. Yes, he's getting on a bit now, and he's nowhere near as quick as he was, but it's still a tough teammate. And like I say, that car should not be winning races, and yet Rosenqvist, or Rosenqvist, I've always called him Rosenqvist, but I think it's Rosenqvist is how you officially say it, so don't get too triggered in the comments, please. But he's consistently quick, and I feel if he didn't have these reliability issues we've seen this season, as well as that little mistake last time out in Rome, which wasn't really his fault. He went over the curbing a bit too sharp, destroyed his left rear tyre, and that screwed his whole weekend over again. But he's shown this season, in my opinion, to be the most consistent, but he's just been hit with severe bad luck, and that's why Rosenqvist isn't leading the championship. But in my eyes, it's definitely close between, I'd say, Rosenqvist, Vergne and di Grassi, but for me, Rosenqvist is still at the top of that pack by a fair chunk, I would say. I think that's a pretty fair statement, but he's not won a championship, so can you really consider him the best in Formula E? Who knows? Moving on to the second one then, Formula 2, who's the best? Well, I've said he's going to win the championship from pretty much as soon as he was announced last season he'd be in Formula 2, Lando Norris. I think we've all got a little bit of a love for Lando Norris, the aka future Lewis Hamilton. He's proved his speed in the opening round of Formula 2 this year. Pole and a race win. I don't think I need to say much more than that, really. Markelov has done really well in Formula 2 last season, and this season he seems to have retained that pace, which is great for him. He's going to be looking a little bit for that Renault seat next season, because I don't think he'll stay another season in Formula 2, so he's going to have to be sort of looking for something else. And Markelov looking strong, so those two I think are going to be the two fighting it out this year. Maybe George Russell and Jack Aitken as well. I'd put those in the mix, and Sergio Sette Camara. Those are the sort of guys getting involved this year, but still, for me, Lando Norris number one. And David, mate, thank you so much for this question, putting me in such an awkward position. Who is the best driver in Formula 1? I think we all know the names that you need to be throwing around. Lewis Hamilton, Vettel, Alonso, Verstappen, Ricciardo, Raikkonen, Hülkenberg, some consider Perez, let's think, Ocon, Bottas, some people think Bottas. You've really got me stuck here. You've really got me stuck, because to pick one means so many haters will be after me now. So thank you so much for this, but I think the best driver in Formula 1 is Lewis Hamilton. I think he's proved over the whole of his career that he's quick, even in a trash car. And you might say, yes, he's been in the winning car his whole career. Well, think back to 2009, how awful that McLaren was, and he still dragged it up to the front. Now, it's very difficult to tell, obviously, recently, because this Mercedes has been dominant. It's been a monster. But he's still doing the business. It's only one season where he slipped up, and arguably, the one season he didn't win it was because of that engine failure in Malaysia. If that hadn't happened, he would have won the World Championship. So, and Nico Rosberg was right, he's not a walkover. He was a great driver. And so, for me, Hamilton has proved his speed. He's not as aggressive as he used to be, and this season's not been a good start for the Brits. So, is he still the best? I still reckon he is, personally. But it's so close. And I think Formula 1 these days, you can't say so-and-so is the best driver. Each weekend it changes, form changes. Max Verstappen at the moment, I don't think many people at the moment on his current form would say he's one of the best. But I think we all know, when he's got a clean weekend, a clean run of races, he really can be phenomenal. So I'm going to go Hamilton for today, but every day that could change, can't it? And thank you for your question, David. You've really mugged me off there, mate. Right, so let's move on to the second question from PSR Schumacher. He asks, what do you believe are Mick Schumacher's prospects? Will he shimmer like Nico, or will he be like Bruno Senna? So, Mick Schumacher, F3. Last season and this season, not too bad of a driver, to be perfectly honest with you. He's not been the best in Formula 3, but again, he's not been the worst. He's going to have to win it this season if he wants any future in Formula 2 or Formula 1. He is a big name, so I'd be very surprised if he wasn't brought into Formula 2 just to drum up the interest in it. You know, the Schumacher name, obviously, we all know Michael Schumacher, the most successful F1 driver of all time in terms of world championships. Such a tragedy a couple of years ago with the skiing accident from Michael, and we've never found out really what's happened. And so Mick is a real shining light for the Schumacher family, and he is the Schumacher heir. So really, the eyes of the world are on him. Already, you look at Belgium last year in Spa when he was presented with that helmet. I think it was a special anniversary of Michael's first ever win. And already, F1 are trying to get him involved. You've seen him on F1 pre-shows, reaction shows. He's there. He's around the world of Formula 1. But his prospects, I can't ever see him getting there. I really can't. Maybe, just maybe, if there's an opening at Alfa Sauber. Maybe Giovinazzi isn't ready. Maybe Schumacher wins Formula 3, moves to Formula 2 and gets second in Formula 2. Then maybe Alfa Sauber could be looking at him. But if I'd put money on it, unfortunately, I don't think he'll ever make Formula 1. But Formula 2, I can imagine him staying there for a couple of seasons. And then I'd probably guess sort of an Indy 500 sort of route, an LMP1 endurance car sort of route. That is what I would guess for Mick Schumacher, unfortunately. And again, unfortunately, I don't think he'll reach the heights of his dad. Good question there, actually. We haven't had a question about Mick Schumacher before. Might be something I do one of the little documentaries on. Hopefully, I've answered your question there. That was a bit of a rushed version, but it's something I'd like to go into a bit more detail on and research a bit more in future. I really enjoyed looking into that one, so thank you for your question there, PSR Schumacher. And the final question comes from Camille, and he asks, do you think Nico Hülkenberg could be a Ferrari driver next season or in 2020 if Kimi Raikkonen stays for the 2019 season? I think it's a possibility, for sure. I think this season so far, my driver of the season has been Nico Hülkenberg. Absolutely smashing it in that Renault. Sainz, I rated highly. I really did. And he's come into Renault. At the end of last season, he was matching Hülkenberg. I know it's different circumstances, different reliability and whatnot during that time period. But start of the season, Hülkenberg's been right on it. Qualifying, best of the rest every single time in terms of P7. I know Haas's have out-qualified him, but typically, P7 is best of the rest. Every single time this season, P7. 22 points scored, the same as Fernando Alonso. The only people higher than him are in Red Bulls, Ferraris and Mercedes. Now, you've got to be doing something right for that to be happening. My driver of the day was Ricciardo in China, but very closely followed by Hülkenberg. And he's been a star, in my eyes, throughout his whole career. And how he hasn't had a podium, I think we're all questioning. And I do think he's a candidate for the Ferrari seat. I think he fits that bill really nicely for what they're looking for in a driver. And yes, he's with Renault at the moment, but what a steal that would be for Ferrari to take him away from Renault. You know, in my prediction video for who I think will be at Ferrari next year, I put Grosjean. He's had an awful start to the season, and it's already looking like that's not going to be the case. Ricciardo is another one I think could really be looking into it. People have been throwing around Magnussen. I've still got this thing in my head about Magnussen's performance last season. Was not good enough. Didn't get into Q3 once. Real aggressive tendencies, making contact more often than not. And yes, he seems to have changed his act this year. But is that enough? Ferrari want a polished driver. Someone who's going to go into that team, doesn't need training, doesn't need looking after. So for me, that rules out Leclerc. That rules out Magnussen, really, unless Magnussen can have a really solid year this season throughout the whole season, which so far, to be fair to him, he has. And I've already gone back on what I said about Magnussen early doors, and he's looked really good this season. So hats off to him there. Grosjean hasn't been quick enough, and it'll just be dependent on what happens with Ricciardo, I think. But Hülkenberg is a real good shout, but I think it will take a lot of effort to get him out of Renault. I really do. On Hülkenberg's personal side and in terms of the team side, Renault won't want their top man moving to Ferrari. That's not what they want. They want Hülkenberg to be their world champion. And Renault, if they keep the trend they've been on the past few years, they could be there next year. They could be there in a top 4 scrap for the title. So I don't imagine Hülkenberg jumping ship anytime soon, but it'll definitely be one that's looked at. His CV will be looked at because he is one of Formula One's best drivers, and he's someone who I think would fit that Ferrari bill nicely. That's it for this week, guys. A bit short in terms of only 3 questions, but the video is a bit longer than usual with the weekly mailbox. If your question wasn't answered, do not worry. I've kept some of the ones that I've not had time to answer for future episodes. So, the F1 nerd, mate, I've seen your questions. Scandinavian, I've seen yours. Loads of them were sent in this week. And guys, if you've got any more questions, put them down in the comments box below for next week's weekly mailbox. There's loads of you that are new to the channel this week. So, if you do have any questions for me, like I say, chuck them down below and I answer them every Wednesday with the weekly mailbox. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching, as always. Thank you very much as well, just again, for 1K subs. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.